Welcome to my talk about Pest Spicy Summer Release. At Laracon US, Nuno, the creator of the Pest framework, presented or revealed some new features for Pest. Is here someone who does not know what the Pest framework is? Okay. But you are familiar with PHP Unit, I guess. So Pest framework is a testing framework on top of PHP Unit, which has a more, or in my opinion, a more intuitive syntax like jest in JavaScript. Maybe you know jest. So, okay. But I think you will get used to it quite fast. We have three topics to cover today. What is within this spicy summer release, then what's next, or what happened between this release at Laracon US 3 or 4 weeks ago and today. And then I will show some random tips and tricks while I'm working with Pest, which are not really related to this summer release, but maybe worth to share with you. So this summer release had 5 new awesome features, but it was only a minor release. So if you're already using Pest in version 2, you can simply do a composer update and you get all the latest feature. It's not a version 3 where you have to be scared of breaking changes. So there are no breaking changes, only new features. Good. Let's jump right into the code. First, this isn't a Pest test. This is a old PHP unit test. So maybe I should able to see, or maybe so. And it's better aligned to the center. So good. This is an old plain PHP unit test, and when you start working with Pest, it's no problem to have PHP unit tests. So you can mix them together. You install Pest, and then both tests are executed through Pest, but the PHP unit tests are still working as they were before. What's new with the current release of Pest? There is an automated way to convert from a PHP unit test to a Pest test. If you have to do this manually, you would get rid of the namespace, of the use statement, all these class boilerplate, the test and the function, and you would write test, or in this case, you could write it, and then just its name, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of things to do. That's easy if you do it manually for one file, but it's a bit cumbersome if you have to do it for all the files in your existing application. So there is a new plugin. It's called the Drift plugin. It's not really into the core of Pest because you only use it once. So you have to install this plugin, convert all your tests, and then you can remove the plugin later on. So we can require, no, that's the wrong one. Here, this Drift, Pest plugin Drift, and then we can, I've already installed it, and then we can just run vendor bin Pest with the Drift option. It tells us it has converted one file, and when we have a look onto the file, it got rid of all the boilerplate, and it renamed the function. It was clever enough to say the function name was it loads the welcome page, so it's using the it method and not the it function, not the test function, and it simply copies the body from the function into this new closure here. If you're using somewhere the basic assert API, like here, assert true is true, it also converts from the assert API to the expectation API. This does not always work, depends on how your test is structured. And additionally, it's capable of converting annotations like the group annotation to use this new modifier function, which has exactly the same purpose than the annotation before. Yep. It's not perfect in the sense of if you have thousands of tests in PHP unit in a larger application, it will not 100% work for every case, but it will help you get done very, very fast and only fixing the issue which it cannot handle automatically. Yep, that's the Drift plugin. Then we can simply remove it again, and we never have to upload the changed composer log file or anything else to Git. We simply upload the test, the changed test files. Yeah, doesn't matter. So then the second thing I want to show you is here in this button test. This is a normal pest file. We have 3 tests in here, which are testing a simple button component, a blade component. But as you can see, there is one test testing if the slot is working within the button, and there are 2 tests related to the icon, which can be added to the button or can be displayed on the button. And there's a new method called describe, and then here we can give it move everything into a new closure, and then we can use this describe method to group them together. This is similar to jest. Jest had the same syntax to group tests. It looks, in my eyes, a little bit nicer when it's grouped here, but the real power is when you are running tests. You can see that. Is it too close to the left? Maybe. How can I move this terminal to the left? It's quite high. So no, a bit hacky, but it's working. So here you can see the tests are prefixed with this description. So we can get rid of maybe this icon here. It can have an individual color, would be enough because it's under this icon description. But that's not all what description can do for you. It's possible to append everything you would be able to append to a normal test, so like to do, and when you are running it again, both tests are a to do. Or we can skip them or whatever, all these possibilities. And one other thing worth to mention is we can add before each, and let's say we define a new title argument or title property here. We can use this within all these tests. So if I did everything correct, this should still work. There are, or there was before, this before each statement on the file itself. So we can define here, maybe go forward, and then if we dd the title in this test, it's go forward, but if we dd within a test here, it's go back. And the inner before each can make use of the outer before each, so we can chain them together. So you can have your basic test setup in a before each, but you can modify your test setup for not only one test, so for a set of tests within one describe block. Yep. That's it about the describe functionality. Any questions so far? No? Great. Let's revert. Then next we have, that was too much of a revert, I guess. Where is my button test? Oh, okay, too much of a revert. So here we are again. Next is snapshot testing. Here we are expecting when we render the button and we give click me to the, or we pass click me to the slot, we will expect to see click me within the rendered blade. And this test looks pretty complete, so it checks for the slot and if the icon's working properly, but it does not prevent us from stuff like this when we are going to add more content to the button element, which would be really ugly if it goes to production and the tests are still passing because we are not checking if there is something else. But with Pest, with the new release, you can say too much snapshot. And if we are going to run again, we will see this test is not passing, it's incomplete because it created a new snapshot of this rendered element. So here is the snapshot file, and we can see what we would expect. When you are going to create or let Pest create a snapshot file, make sure you are checking what is within the snapshot file. So if there is an error inside, it will check against an error. And when we are running the tests again, all of them are passing. But when we are going to the button component, add some random stuff and run it again, it will fail on too much snapshot. And what is really nice, you will get a nice diff output where you can see what was accidentally added. So we are going to revert this again. But what if we are going to change something that is intended to be changed? So we are changing the color. Obviously, when we are going to run the tests, the snapshot test will fail because of the changed font color, font color. But we can use update snapshot, and Pest will automatically update all our snapshots. But once again, use the update snapshots carefully. If you run it, it will regenerate all the snapshots generated before. It also cleans up snapshots which are not used anymore. So yeah, use it wisely. But it's still better instead of going into every snapshot file and update them manually. Right. And also it's important that you push your snapshot files to the Git repository. Otherwise, your CI pipeline will mark all the tests as incomplete, but not as failed. So your CI pipeline will pass, and it doesn't matter what you have changed in your code. Yep. Maybe some of you already used snapshot testing before. There used to be a SPAFI package for Pest or for PHP unit, for both of them, which already did the same. So it's nothing new, but it's new that it's in the core of Pest. Then go back again. Architectural testing. That's not a new feature in Pest. This summer, it was a new feature when Pest 2 was initially released earlier this year. So you are able to test your architectural rules that you defined in your company, on your project team, whatever. There were simple tests possible, like we expect that dd and dump is never used in our application, or it was possible to check that under the app enums namespace, we only have enums, under app concerns, we only have traits, etc. With this new release, we're able to do more complex stuff. Here we are going to expect that under app actions, we only use, we always use strict types. And when we are going to run this test, we see that the create user action is not using strict types. So we can fix this here and run the test again, and now it's passing. There's a method to be invocable, for example, and we ensure that every class is invocable. But as we can see here, the create user uses a handle method instead of invoke, but we want to enforce that everything is invocable. So we can change this to invoke, and it's passing again. And something else that is new is we can assert that it has a suffix, or every class has a suffix, or in this case, not to have a suffix. We don't want to have that actions are suffixed with the name action. So create user instead of create user action. This should already pass. And then something else that's nice, here under the actions namespace, we not only have action classes, we have contracts as well, like this delete user contract, and the checks are performed on the classes and the interfaces on both. But there is a last, no, that's wrong. There's a last check to have suffix contract, because we want to enforce here. It's suffixed with contract, but only for interfaces. So we can restrict or limit the set to the interfaces. There are all different kind, like enums, classes, interfaces, traits, or you can limit the expectations to a set. Yep. And yeah, the only is not from the Arch test itself. It's only limits to run only this test. So yeah, that are the more or less all of the new features you got for architectural testing. I'm using it quite heavily already, because I think it's a good practice to enforce architectural decisions in code, and not only on a paper which is lying on a desk and nobody cares about it. Yep. And last but not least, the fifth new functionality is once again a plugin. It's the type coverage plugin. And let's require this first. It's a first-party plugin as well, the type coverage. What it can do for us is ensure that all the types in our applications, or all parameters, return types, etc., are type hinted in our application. So that's the wrong one. Type coverage. We can run ddWhen Pest, but this time with the type coverage parameter. So it's going to run the type coverage plugin instead of the normal Pest. And what it does, it shows a list of all our classes we have in our app folder, and it shows us with how many other which files are fully type covered and which are not. As we can see here, we have a user policy, which has two errors. One is PA9, it's a bit cryptic. PA means parameter, and 9 is line 9. Here it's the parameter user, which is not type hinted. And there is a second one, the RT, that stands for return type. Return type on number 14, 14, yes, is missing, so it should return a Boolean. And when we run it again, we can see it's fully typed. Good. When we revert this, we can see it's only 99.2%. When we want to enforce minimal level, we can do the same like with the code coverage. We have the same option for type coverage. We can pass as minimum 100%, so everything has to be covered. Otherwise, the command exits with an error. That's very helpful when you are using it in your CI pipeline. In practice, it's very hard to reach 100%, not only because we are lazy, it's because sometimes you are extending an existing class from a package, or you're implementing an interface coming from a package which is not type hinted, then we are not able to type it as well. And currently there is no way in this type coverage plugin to exclude some files or exclude lines from the check. So when you have one of these files, it's not possible to enforce 100% anymore. There are open PRs, so maybe they get accepted, and then you should be able to, like with PHP stan, like I think it's type coverage ignore. Maybe you are familiar to this syntax from PHP stan. And the other PR is to ignore some files like user policy. Yeah, but still this functionality is not in there. So be careful using this one, because maybe you enforce 100% today, but tomorrow you are not able to keep it up to 100%. Yep, that's type coverage. And that's everything that came out on Laracon US. So these are the 5 new big features. But in the time between Laracon US and today, they already had 5, or when we count the release this morning, 6 releases. So with 4 new features. So as you can see, the framework is developing quite quickly at the moment. These features are a bit smaller than the other ones, so I'd like to give you a short overview of them as well. Is this what's new test? Here we go. this is a simple but a bit silly test. We are creating a user and we are checking with a factory, and we are checking that this test is not, this user is not disabled. This test is passing once again and once more, but sometimes this test is randomly failing. Yeah, but I'm not able to reproduce. But in your CI pipeline, it has failed. Now you can chain repeat and say we want to run this test 100 times. And sure, one of them has failed. We can run it again. Now it has failed 4 times. That's quite helpful to debug errors, which doesn't occur every time you run the test. It's not really intended to be used on a regular basis to run the sim. It's not like a if statement where you have access to this maybe count, or you could use this. That's not possible. It's only executing the test multiple times. What's nice about that, we have the same test again and the second test, and both of these tests are failing randomly. So we can use the repeat functionality on the describe block as well, and both of the tests are running 100 times. Something you can see here, when I ran the test before, which within PHP unit, it worked fine. But here within the describe block, it doesn't work. This is not because of the repeat. This is because of the PHP, the Pest plugin for PHP Storm isn't capable of describe blocks yet. So we have to run this in the console. Oh, no tests found. Uh-oh.
I think you have to uncomment the first line.
I think it's this one. It's okay with when you have only on a test and a filter for different tests. So I hope it was this one. Yeah, it was this one. It's good. Yeah, it ran 200 assertions or 200 tests because there were 2 tests within this repeat block. Within this describe block, sorry. When you are repeating a test, it would be nice to debug which test has failed and not. What we can do, or to debug, what we often do is dump the user, maybe the attributes. Is this not a problem? Oh. But now it's really hard to see which one has failed or which one is which output here. So we can use something different. That's called ddWhen. And then we can say only when the user is disabled. So when we run it again, it only dumps the user, or doesn't dumps the user when the user is disabled. It automatically dumps the value under test. So this only works with the expectation API. It's not possible to do something like that with this. So you have to do it on the expectation API. ddWhen, or I forgot something. There is the opposite of ddWhen. There's a ddUnless as well. So you can do the opposite. Next, if you have not a test that loops 100 times, instead we have a test that creates 100 users, and then it asserts for every user that disabled is false. When we run this test, it's only one test, but it will always fail because never ever there is no chance that it succeeds 100 times in a row, or nearly no chance. Here can help us ddWhen as well. We can pass a closure here, accept the user, and say if the user is disabled. And that's dd again, this user which is accidentally disabled. There are two ways to use the ddWhen. One is directly on the expectation API, and one is within an each closure. Yep. ddUnless works as well in here. Yeah, that's ddWhen and ddUnless. And the most minor update, in my opinion, are 4 new expectations to be a string to be uppercase, lowercase, alphanumeric, or to be alpha or numeric only. It's not numeric like 1.0 is numeric as well, but alpha is only digits are allowed. Yep. And there was one more addition. This one we already saw before. This to be invocable here in the actions test. This came with 2.11 or 1 or 2 releases after the Laracon US. Yep. These are the 4 new features that were introduced between the Laracon and today. And last but not least, 3 little random tricks I'm using or constantly reaching for. One is it's cleared here. When we use the coverage plugin, we have to remember it's pest, it's type coverage, it's a minimal parameter or option. With all these additions, it's more and more complex to run the tests in the console. So I'm normally going to create scripts in my composer JSON file, like this test type coverage, where I can put the right the right command, and if it's in another project we are not able to reach 100%, only 95, I can adjust it in the composer JSON in this specific project, but in all of my project I can run test type coverage and got the expected output, or expect the commands to run. As you can see, I prefix them with test colon and then the name. I have a test or a script called test, the name of the namespace, which calls all of this commands under the test namespace. So before I do any commit, I can run composer test, and it will execute all the tests before I push to the CI pipeline. And then I use bash aliases to code T is composer test and code tip is composer test pest, so a bit faster again. Yep. Doing it directly with bash aliases would be possible as well, but it wouldn't be possible to have differences between the projects you are working on. That's one. Then the second one, this PHP Storm plugin, which we talked about before, because it's not capable of the describe block. It has some nice features. Not only you can run the tests like you are able with PHP unit, they added a feature where you can add a new pest test. Here you can name the test like secret page, doesn't matter. We don't have to append test. We can choose if we want to start with it or test, and then we choose it, hit enter. it creates a file already with some stuff in there. It's, I have a shortcut for that. It's possible to nest stuff, and then it's automatically going to create the right folder structure. So you're a little bit faster creating new tests with this plugin. And one last thing I'm constantly reaching for is in this. Maybe you saw it in the blade test before. We check, we can add a Laracon icon here, and we are checking if this icon is rendered. So I've copied a snippet from the SVG path to ensure that this part of the path is rendered, and then I can say, okay, the icon is rendered. But I think it would be more readable when we can say to contain icon, and then pass something in here. For sure this won't work because the to contain icon is not here, but we can extend the expectation API with our custom expectations. Here I'm going to render the icon, regex out the path again, and assert that this path is visible within the rendered blade file. When we are running the test again, sure, now it's passing. If you wonder why regex is needed here, it's because when you're rendering an icon, it injects maybe the classes or whatever you pass when you're rendering the component. So we don't know what the whole string will be, but we are sure that the path, the SVG path, has to be in there. So this is something that existed already before in Pest, not only starting from Laracon US, but I think it's so important for me that I want to mention it here because it makes the test so much cleaner to read. It's not for me to write the test, it's more about my fellow colleagues coming and have to understand what this test means. By the way, when Laracon updates its icons and the paths changes, not all the tests are breaking. So yeah, that's much better to do it like that. Yeah, that's it. Most important thing, stay up to date. I would highly recommend to subscribe to the new releases on GitHub if you are using Pest regularly. At the moment, they're having one or more releases per week, so there is always something new. Or follow at Pest PHP on Twitter, no, X. Good. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed my talk. Thank you.